It's actually been really interesting and kind of fun to come in. You definitely kind of get put with a certain scope of tools they get to use. You know, like this is how the engine is. These are the things. This is what it can do. This is what it can't do. So it's a very different challenge than when you start a project. When you start a project, it's all blue sky and oh, maybe we can do this and do that, and you just try everything. When you come in the last, 8 to 10 months of a project, there's a lot of restrictions in place. But I think it's also is a really interesting challenge for a designer, because then you can come in and say, well, let's try this. Can we do that? Can we make it work this way? How do we make these pieces work together? Then you also look and say, this could be better. This isn't working. You need to be very surgical in the way that you approach stuff. But it is a lot of what I used to do back at Blizzard. When I started at Blizzard, I came in literally on the last, I think, 6 months of the original Warcraft, Orcs and Humans, and I just started in the industry, so I was like doing the manual and doing some voiceover and stuff. But then I was there from the beginning of War II all the way through the expansion. But then, and the same thing with Diablo, with the original Diablo. But then after that, every project that I went and worked on had already been started. So I was always coming in the middle or towards the end of a project and saying like, great, we need to move you over to Starcraft. We're going to be shipping in 8 months. We need some help to get it out. Okay, I would work on that. And then same thing with Diablo 2 and with the expansion and, jumping around. And so this is kind of a return to what I did. When we started Flagship, again, it was that like, oh, wow, right at the beginning of a project, all things are possible. But after about a year and a half in on that game, I was the CEO. So I had to start doing much less, if almost no game design and development, because it was all about trying to run the company. So this has been actually really great to come back and jump back in and say, okay, great, what are we doing? Well, there's this fantastic team in place. There's a great game that's already there. How do we make it better? What do we do? How can we, turn it up here or do these things? Can we, let's try to challenge ourselves. And when we know it doesn't really do this, can we get a little technology added in to, because we really want the tool to work this way. And it's been really great. It's been a lot of fun to come in and have that level of interaction with the team that's so good and has been working on the game for a while. I mean, I think one of probably the biggest thing when I started there, the UI was really bad. It was really bad, and everybody knew it was bad. It wasn't like I was pointing out something people didn't know. I think we then really put a refocus on hiring a UI designer specifically. Guru is our nickname for him. He's our UI guru. And we moved UI from being a game-specific component to being a core technology component. So every game has its own UI artist and people that worry about UI, but all the UI improvements we do are now part of our core technology, so it spreads to all the different games. So when we make and Champions is kind of pushing that stuff right now, but when we add some kind of new UI functionality, Star Trek gets to use it immediately because it's in the core code base. I think a lot of it too was coming in and trying to define, how can we push content to users, like what's ways we can do that, how can we kind of spread some of the experiences over the entirety of the game. Things were kind of like blocked, like, oh, when you get to here, this is the thing you're going to do, and then here it's like, well, that's really cool. How can we make that, so it's a kind of evening out the ideas. I think that there was a lot of really good concepts and really strong gameplay systems and things, but they tended to be kind of in piles. And so a lot of it was, how can we sift this out? How can we spread that experience out? So as I go through the game, I'm getting these like, oh, this is a new thing, this is a new thing, this is a new thing, but then experiencing it and kind of layering it. I know design is always, I think, sometimes it's difficult to describe because it is, in some ways you can point to a mission and say, oh, this is how I created this mission, this is how it works. But from a higher level, it's more trying to look at the overall, I guess, architecture of the game and saying, how do we make this a compelling experience from when a player first starts to, when they get to the end game, and then what are they doing in the end game too. And coming up with the whole end game, there was a lot of good plans for a mega system that were already in place, but it was like saying, okay, well, we can't do all of those because we just aren't going to have time. How do we lay the groundwork for that? A lot of it's foundation building too. you know, what can we do? What can we get in time? How do we lay that down? Like Nemesis was already in process. Part of what I had to do was focus it on what we could accomplish with it, but then also make sure we were laying the groundwork for what it then can become after the game launches. And then, you know, I think the huge benefit I've had is on laying any of those ideas out is the team's amazing. So they just like, you know, bam, they go and they execute it, and it's phenomenal. So I get excited just playing it, you know. And that's been, I think, maybe the biggest bonus we've had around the office, especially, is having, you know, people like you know, like John Needham, who's our CEO, or Jack, who's the Chief Creative Officer, playing the game all the time now, and they're, you know, they're at the point now where they're like, oh, I just want to play, not because I have to play, because I want to play. And that's what you always try to get to, is when people in the company that are going to be the harshest critics, right, are the ones that are just excited to get in and play the game because they're having a good time. From a technology standpoint, there's no reason we can't do that. Okay. I think that'll just end up being more of a business decision on, you know, how do they intermingle. It's not decided yet, but there's no reason we couldn't do it. So I think it's just going to be more of a call on what makes the most sense. Like, how do the games play? How does it play together? You know, does it feel like there's an advantage a console player has over a PC player, or vice versa? If the feel isn't right between the two, or if we have to make any game balance changes for the console version, for example, because of pacing or things like that, then we probably wouldn't mix them. But from a technology standpoint, you know, we can easily do it. Yeah, UI, definitely, I think that'll be the biggest focus we have on the console side. Is we've been doing is paying a lot of attention, spending a lot of time on the PC interface, because that's where we know we're launching first. We have complete control over launching the PC version. When we get over to the console stuff, I think we'll spend a lot of time on how do we make the UI work really well on the controller. You can play the game on the controller now, and you know, we haven't made any decisions that prevent us from being on the consoles, but you know, we've added a lot of stuff on the UI on the PC side where we'll have to go back and say, okay, how do we best present that on the console? Because it should feel like a console resident product.